Cleaning an abandoned house covered in vines, discovering a mysterious grave, ghostly shadows, and dangerous reptiles, deep in a quiet rural area, far away from busy roads and crowded villages, there stands an abandoned house that has been forgotten for many years. The house is hidden behind thick bushes, tall grass, and heavy vines that have slowly taken over every part of the structure. From a distance, it almost looks like the house has become part of the forest itself. Many local villagers avoid this place. Over time, stories and rumors have spread about the abandoned house. Some people say strange lights can sometimes be seen through the broken windows at night. Others claim that a pale white figure occasionally appears near the entrance before disappearing into the darkness. Whether these stories are real or simply legends, no one has dared to stay near the house for very long. Curiosity and the desire to clean and explore the area led us to visit the property. Our plan seemed simple at first. We wanted to clear the vines covering the house, check the inside, and see if the land could be restored for farming or living again. However, none of us expected that this ordinary cleaning mission would slowly turn into a mysterious and dangerous adventure. The first look at the abandoned house.
Nếu mà đi gặp ta thì hỏi đâu nhà này nhưng mà bỏ hoang chủ đi đâu để có xin phép.
The wind moved gently through the tall grass, and the vines covering the house walls swayed slightly. The entire building was almost completely wrapped in thick green vines. Some of them were as thick as a human arm and tightly wrapped around the windows and doors. Others had climbed all the way to the roof, spreading across the broken tiles like a living net. The front yard was covered with weeds and wild plants that had grown freely for years. Broken wooden fences were barely visible under layers of plants and moss. Standing in front of the house felt strange. Even during the daytime, the building seemed dark and lifeless. Beginning the cleaning work, we started by cutting away the thick vines that blocked the front entrance. Using knives and small machetes, we carefully removed the tangled plants that had grown across the door. Every cut caused dry vines to fall to the ground with cracking sounds. Slowly, the original wooden door began to appear. The door itself was old and damaged. The wood had rotted in many places, and one of the hinges had already broken. When we pushed the door open, it made a long creaking sound that echoed inside the empty house. Dust floated through the air as sunlight entered through holes in the roof. Inside the house, everything was covered in dirt and fallen leaves. Pieces of broken furniture were scattered across the floor. The walls were cracked, and parts of the ceiling had collapsed. The smell of moisture and decay filled the air. Every step on the wooden floor produced small cracking sounds. It felt as if the house had been asleep for many years and was slowly waking up again. The first dangerous discovery. While we were clearing debris near the entrance, one of us suddenly heard a soft rustling sound from a dark corner of the room. When we pointed a flashlight toward the sound, we were shocked to see a large snake lying under a pile of dry leaves. The snake quickly moved away, sliding silently across the floor before disappearing into a hole in the wall. At that moment, we realized the house was not truly empty. After being abandoned for so long, the building had become a perfect shelter for many animals, especially reptiles, snakes, lizards, and other creatures who easily hide in cracks, holes, and dark corners of the structure. From that point forward, we worked more carefully, watching every step and checking every pile of debris before touching it, exploring the background. After cleaning the main room, we moved toward the back of the house. The back entrance was tall grass reached almost to our waists, and thick bushes covered most of the ground. It took a long time to clear the path through the plants. While cutting through the grass, one member of our group noticed something unusual sticking out from the ground. At first, it looked like a wood stone, but as we cleared the way the grass and we realized something surprising. It was a grave. The mysterious grave. The grave was built with old bricks and partially covered in moss and dirt. A small stone marker stood at the head of the grave, but the writing had faded over time. It was almost impossible to read the name or date carved into the stone. The discovery of a grave directly behind the abandoned house made everyone feel uneasy. No one knew who had been buried there. Some members of the group remembered hearing local stories about a tragedy that once happened near this house. According to the rumors, a family had lived here before the property was suddenly abandoned. But no one knew the full story. Standing near the grave, surrounded by silence and wild plants, created a strange feeling. It felt as if the place still held memories from the past. A strange sight at dusk. As the sun began to set, the forest around the house became darker and quieter. We decided to stop working for the day and pack our tools, but just as we were preparing to leave, something unusual. One member of the group suddenly pointed toward the grave. For a brief moment, a faint white figure seemed to be standing beside it. The figure looked almost human, but its shape was blurry and unclear. Within seconds, it disappeared. No one could explain exactly what had been seen. Some thought it might have been a trick of the fading sunlight or shadows moving through the vines. Others were not so sure. Even though we tried to stay calm, the atmosphere around the house suddenly felt colder. More hidden dangers. Before leaving, we decided to check the area around the grave one last time. While examining the ground, we noticed long dragging marks in the soil. The marks looked like something large had moved across the ground recently. They led toward a thick bush near the back of the yard. When we carefully shined a flashlight into the bush, we saw something that made everyone step back. A large python was coiled inside the leaves. The snake was motionless, blending perfectly with the surroundings. Its body was thick and long, showing that it had probably been living in the area for a long time. The abandoned house and overgrown yard had become a safe hiding place for dangerous wildlife. This discovery reminded us that the area was not only mysterious but also potentially very dangerous. Leaving the abandoned house, the sun had nearly disappeared behind the trees, and darkness was slowly covering the entire area. We decided it was best to leave and return another day. As we walked away from the house, we looked back one last time. The building stood quietly in the fading light, still wrapped in vines and shadows. The grave behind the house remained hidden among the plants, and somewhere nearby, the python was still resting in the bushes. The abandoned house had revealed only a small part of its secrets. There were still many unanswered questions. Who was buried behind the house? Why was the property suddenly abandoned? And what exactly did we see near the grave at sunset? Perhaps the answers are still waiting to be discovered. For now, the house remains silent, holding its mysteries deep within the forest. And one day, when we return to continue cleaning and exploring, we may uncover even more chilling truths hidden within this forgotten place.
Cái này cũng rất là nhiều hóa xuống.
Ngày mai nó bị mọc mà. Thì phải cho cái gì?
Nó gọi là thực hiện.
À, thực hiện.
Gọi là sẽ sang Tết nữa, ảnh hưởng đến sản xuất.
Cho nó báo bạn đi nhé.
Vâng, xong bên đây sang một. Mẹ ơi.
Cứ nó con đây vô. Bấm đây.
Mẹ ơi. Ôi, đừng nhanh em lấy đi chụp này. Cái này đi. Ông bù này của mẹ đấy.
Đừng vào chị ạ. Buồn đừng có vào.
Của mẹ đấy, cắn luôn.
Bây giờ thấy con cắn to lắm đấy chị ạ.
Cái tôm này.
Tôi về nhà hoang mới dọn này.
Mẹ lắm. Cắt này, cắt này.
Rồi nhanh. Chị đây.
Đây làm tôi đi.
Cắt luôn. 1 2.
Để bóc nhá. Để đi nghỉ nữa. Để bóc sạch luôn. Chết rồi Trơn. Hết ma sát. Trơn. Đâu. Rồi. Thêm. Nặng này sao bên?
Có cái tao cắt thôi.
Đi. Cắt đi vậy.
Hai. Hai cắt. Cào đi phát sân sẽ bắn luôn.
Đừng kịp lại. Càng thế. Ta làm cũng.
Đi bắn luôn đi. Quay bên đây, nhìn kênh trở kìa. Cái gì vậy?
Em sẽ sỏi.
Đây kiểu hai thằng muốn nhau sao?
Nó sỏi. Em cũng chìm. Em cũng chìm.
Không. quá đâu. Cái bánh sau. Abandonment.